Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Governor Haley, congratulations on your nomination.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for spending some time with me yesterday.
I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Me too, and as I said to you then, I've been impressed by your work as the governor of South Carolina.
Thank you.
And I very much appreciate in your statement your commitment to the U.S. leadership in the world and to your comments about your conversation with the president-elect about being a strong voice at the UN for the United States. But I have to say that unfortunately, as strong as I believe our ambassador to the UN can be, the president's words are often taken with much more weight. And I am disturbed by some of the president-elect's comments that are different than those positions you've enunciated here. About the institutions that the United States helped create after World War II, about the UN. He recently called it, in a tweet, just a club for people to get together and talk and have a good time. In interviews this weekend, he criticized NATO. He was amazingly nonchalant about the future of the European Union and the transatlantic alliance. And I see the potential for real negative consequences because of that failure to recognize those institutions that have helped promote the security of the United States and have helped us as we've tried to lead in the world. So I appreciate that you have said that you have the ear of the president and that you will be part of the national security apparatus. I think that's very important. But how will you avoid the conflict between your efforts at the UN and the Security Council and the president-elect's tweets, the positions that he's taken on many of the issues that will come before the United Nations?
You know, I think that what the president-elect has put out there are his opinions as they stand now. What I do think is going to happen is I look forward to communicating to him how I feel, as I know the rest of the National Security Council does as well. It is important that we have alliances. I know the president-elect realizes that. It is important that we create coalitions, and I know that he realizes that as well. And so his comments are really coming from the fact that he does have a fresh set of eyes. He is looking at those things. But my job's not just at the UN. My job is to come back to the National Security Council and let them know what I know, which is I want to bring back faith to the UN. I want to show that we can be a strong voice in the UN. I want to show that we can make progress and have action in the UN. That's going to happen from my actions and from the things that I do. And that's how I will show him that the UN matters. NATO obviously has been an alliance that we value, an alliance that we need to keep. And I think that as we continue to talk to him about these alliances and how they can be helpful and strategic in the way that we move forward, I do anticipate that he will listen to all of us and hopefully that we can get him to see it the way we see it.
Well, so do you agree with his suggestion that Vladimir Putin has been a stronger, better leader than Angela Merkel?
I think that what he is looking at, just like he's looking at associations, he's looking at opportunities, and he's trying to find opportunities where he can relate to different leaders and work with different leaders. That's not a bad thing. We should want.
It's not a very good way to relate to Angela Merkel, though.
No, it's not, and I agree with you on that. But I do think that's where he's trying to go, is see what relationship he can have with a lot of different leaders. And I think our goal is pull out the best we can in who we can deal with without having to talk negatively about someone else.
I appreciated your comments about disagreeing with the idea of a registry for any particular group in the United States for Muslims. In the past, you've criticized then-candidate Trump for proposing a ban on all Muslims traveling to the United States. Do you continue to believe that that's unconstitutional?
Yes, I do, and I made that clear during that time, just as I always speak up when I think something's wrong. But I do want to add that the president-elect has corrected his statement and said that he does not believe there should be a full ban on Muslims. He does believe that we should be conscious, as we're looking at the refugee crisis and otherwise, that we do not take people from any areas of threat.
Today, about 60% of all maternal deaths take place in humanitarian situations like refugee camps or areas that have been affected by conflict. And in these settings, women and girls are often cut off from health care. You pointed out in your statement that you appreciate the challenges so many young women and girls face around the world in terms of access to the advantages we have in the United States. Many of those lives have been saved and can be saved with access to proper care, including prenatal care, voluntary family planning, and skilled birth attendance. And the United Nations Population Fund is the world's leading provider of life-saving care for mothers and their babies in humanitarian settings. They work with the World Food Program, with UNICEF, with the UNHCR. So if confirmed, would you continue to support those efforts by UNFPA?
I will support any efforts that help educate, help plan, help let them know what contraceptions are in place so that we can avoid any other further action. I am strongly pro-life, and so anything that we can do to keep from having abortions or to keep them from not knowing what is available, I will absolutely support.
Well, I very much appreciate that, because I think sometimes the idea of access to family planning services is conflated with abortion, and it's a very different issue. And this is a way to avoid abortions, unplanned pregnancies.
That's exactly
so
right.
Thank you very much for that comment. As governor of South Carolina, you took the position that Syrian refugees were not being properly vetted, and so you question whether they should be allowed to settle in South Carolina. As ambassador to the UN, the U.S. has had a role in galvanizing global support for refugees. Do you see that the position, how will you be able to resolve the position that you've taken in South Carolina with your new role as ambassador when it comes to refugees? And I'm out of time, so I don't know if...
Very briefly.
That's hard to give a brief answer to, but I will say that, first of all, our refugee program in this country is one that is valued and has done a lot of good. And when it comes to refugees, we have to remember those that we have always tried to help, those that have been persecuted for any reason. I will give a personal story in that my husband, when he was deployed to Afghanistan, there were 2 interpreters that kept his unit safe, and they kept them without harm. When it was time for that unit to leave, those 2 interpreters staying, they would have been killed. And so what the refugee program rightly does is it allowed them to go through and vet those interpreters. Those interpreters are now in the United States. They are now having jobs and contributing members of society. The issue with the refugees in terms of the Syrians, as governor of South Carolina, we always welcomed the refugee program. It changed when it came time to the Syrian refugees, and that was at a time where I did have a conversation with Director Comey, and I said, tell me if this is any different than the way we've handled it before. And that is when Director Comey said, we don't have enough information to vet these refugees. And I said, so you can't vet them the same way you vet others? And he said, we don't have the information. And that's when I said, we can't take refugees from Syria until I know that I can protect the people of South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.